Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be going over the cloth meta guide. So the other two guides, the plate and the leather, have gone down really well, so we're going to do exactly the same setup. We're going to go through all the helmets, all the chests, all the boots, what I think is good right now, what builds it can be used in, all the things like that. But yeah, so let's get straight into it. So I'm going to start with the cloth helmets. Again, I'm going to use the elders just to show off, just because it gives all the skills on them. We're going to start from the bottom. So I'm going to go over the passives. The first passive is Aggression. Increases your damage and heal power by 3.5%. That is a flat 3.5% damage and healing buff. Pretty damn strong. Concentration. Cast speed is increased by 5.263%. Bit of a weird number, however, typically bad. Now, most people are going to question it and be like, okay, but why is it bad if damage is good? Because it drains your energy faster. So if you're using a really energy draining build, having cast speed on it is just going to make it worse. Then we've got Efficiency, 3.5% reduced energy cost. As DPS, I think you're going to always go Aggression. As healer, I believe you can play between them. This is a bit if and when as to, it's pretty much personal preference. So I know our healer runs with Eye of Secrets, pretty much always runs with Aggression because he's never had energy problems. But anyway, let's get into the skills. First one is Energy Regain. Energy Regain is on every helmet. Again, I said this in every video, so no different in this. You then have Force Field, which is cloth helmet only, which knocks back all enemies around you for 30.67 meters. That's a massive knockback, by the way, dealing 177 damage to them. So it's a fairly good amount of damage. Obviously, it is scaled up to a high iron power. 30-second cooldown on a 30-meter knockback. That's a huge knockback. That's like 2/3 the length of a jewel ring, if you're going to put it like that. It's pretty damn insane. If you're someone that gets targeted a lot, this is a potential that you can run. But we'll go into that further in a second with the other cows. You then got Poison. Coach your weapon with Poison. Your next auto attack will poison the enemy, damaging him for 105 damage per second for 5 seconds. That's like 530 odd damage or something. Quite a lot of damage. 30-second cooldown is pretty substantial if you're going for pure damage. But yeah, so we'll move on to the next one. Next one is Cleric Cow. The only thing that changes here is Ice Block. Ice Block, that ability we see in every single group comp. So on a 40-second cooldown, channeled ability which instantly makes you immobile and invulnerable to damage. So I believe this scales with item power in terms of length up to a maximum of 6.5 seconds. That is huge, by the way. Imagine 6.5 seconds of just chilling in an ice block. Pretty decent. While in this, you are invulnerable to damage. However, dots, bleeds, poisons, all that can still be applied to you. So you're not immune, you're just invulnerable to damage at that time. Obviously, it does make you immobile, but pairs really well with a couple of the healer staffs that have like a timed tick, if that makes sense. Like a timed heal, because they can pop it on you. You can go into Ice Block and survive until it pops, basically. Pretty solid Cleric Cow. Pretty much every single person using a cloth cowl at the moment runs with the Cleric Cow. It's just really strong. Too short of a cooldown, I believe. I think it should be up to maybe a minute. When you go into Scholar Robe, applies an energy shield on yourself which increases your resistances by 44 for 8 seconds. While the shield is up, you will store energy every time you take damage on a 30-second cooldown. This is insane. Like, this is ridiculous. A lot of people just completely ignore this because it isn't Ice Block. But when I was running Frost, I was almost always the kill target, and I tried this for a little while and pretty much I just didn't die while it was up. Like, the resistances are a big buff, just defensively, and having that much energy come back, like every time you take damage, that's not like once a second, that is every single time you take damage. If their whole team's on you with dots, bleeds, poisons, whatever, you can gain like 0 to 100% energy. It's just ridiculous. Our tank actually runs this, that's how strong this can be. But yeah. So moving on to the Royal Cow. Obviously Royal is the one upgraded from Sigils. Master the forbidden secret of unlimited energy. Briefly, at least, the spell will reduce your energy cost for all spells to 0 for 6 seconds. Basically, 6 seconds out of 30 seconds, you get free casts. It's good, only if you're using that much energy. Like, it can be paired with things like maybe the Scholar Robe if you're going for a pure like energyless build, but yeah, there's maybe a couple of things you compare it with, but I haven't seen people run it reliably because it just is unnecessary, to be honest. It's also too short of a duration for it to matter. It's only 6 seconds. It's like 6 frost bolts. It's not enough to make a difference in a fight. Druid Cowden. Now this one is worth making a difference. Place an area under you which replenishes energy for you and allies. The area lasts for 5 seconds and replenishes 17 energy per second. That's a massive amount of energy. Like, it's just unfathomable how much energy that really is in the grand scheme of things, especially for your whole team if you can all get in there. It's on a 5-second duration with a 30-second cooldown, so it is up a lot as well. Obviously that's affected by cooldown reduction. So it is a really crazy helmet for what it could potentially do. I would recommend having one person who's potentially not like a kill target on your team run this, just for things like GVGs. I wouldn't run it for Hellgates because they typically are shorter fights, but things like Guild vs Guild, yeah, this is definitely something that is worth using. I think it's quite strong. So we're into the Fiend Cow. It's just a straight removes all positive status effects of an enemy. This includes ice block, this includes invulnerabilities, it includes block. Any single positive buff the enemy has, including all hots, heals, everything, is gone. 40-second cooldown. It's crazy strong. No one's using it right now just because of how hard it is to get the cloth visor, but yeah, I think this should see a lot more gameplay when hell artifacts are a little bit more common. So I'm going to move on to the chests. I'm going to start with the Mage Rose. Again, the 3 skills are the same, so it's 8% damage and heal power increase, 11% cast speed and 8% energy cost. They're all the same skills, they're just obviously higher for the chest. Again, I'd pretty much stay away from the cast speed one unless you're specifically running a fast cast like energy efficient build, which I can't see happening, to be honest. It's better just to take the flat damage or the energy cost reduction, sorry. Again, going into the skills, mend wounds every single chest. It's good for soloing but nothing else. Frost shield is on every single cloth robe. Increases your armor and magic resist by 83 for 8 seconds. That's a lot, by the way. Enemies that attack you are slowed by 20% for 5.26 seconds, and reflects 10% of the incoming damage before armor and magic resist, so it's actually flat 10% of the damage you take. Minute cooldown, which is a little bit annoying. That's a bit too long of a cooldown in my opinion, but it is a massive ability. Like, so let's break this down. You've got the resistance buff. The resistance buff in itself is 83 resistances for 8 seconds. That in itself is quite strong. You then have a slow on that, which means any melee you can just run away from. You're going to take less damage, and when they hit you they're going to be slowed, so you can leave them. And then you've got the incoming damage reflection, which just means you survive because you're doing so much damage back to them. Like, they have to then swap off you because otherwise they're going to start killing themselves. It's pretty strong. I like it. I'd run it occasionally if we're like running against a very aggressive and high damage team. And then lastly, Berserker. I love Berserker and I think it's completely underrated. So your damage and resistances are increased by 5 seconds. The less health you have upon activation, the stronger the effect. The minimum damage increases 5% and resistance is increased by 5. So this stacks up to 19 stacks. It actually says 20 stacks, but to get 20 stacks you would have to be at 0% health. Pretty impossible to do. So basically you get a stack for every 5% health you've lost. I've popped this at like getting like 17 stacks before, which is why my whole build works with what I'm using at the moment. I've actually tried it with Curse Staff. When I got 17 stacks, my dots were ticking for 517 every single tick. That's over 600 then when I used the Armor Pierce. Like, that's insane. I actually let someone get me really low and then let me burst them with a Greater Curse Staff. They were dead before the end of my channel. Like, it's just ridiculous. It does so much damage. You have to be able to, you have to know exactly how much damage something's going to do to you though, because if you mistime it and don't use this, then you're low health with no way of coming back. But this is a way to really counter engage on someone. If someone comes in on you, chunks you to half, you can pop this and chunk them back, and that really is what I use it for. Cleric Robe. If you get damaged within the next 1.5 seconds, you become invulnerable and your damage and heal power is increased by 30% for 3 seconds. So I tried playing around with this before, and it says if you get damaged. I believe there's a certain damage they have to hit. It's not like 1 damage, because I couldn't trigger this every time, but when I did trigger it, it was pretty decent. However, it only lasts for 3 seconds. That's not enough to make enough of a difference in a fight. Becoming invulnerable, again, it's invulnerable, not immune. So you can still have dots applied to you, you can still have fire, poison, crowd control, all of it. So it's good, but I think it's very, very overrated. I don't think it should have such a big place in the meta right now. Scholar Robe. Doubles your cast speed and decreases energy cost by 20% for 8 seconds. This is kind of like just a burst mage's dream. Like a fire mage, a frost mage with the right build can pummel so much damage into someone with this, and again it's completely underused because you're casting at less than like half a second then, so you're not even going to be interrupted really, like realistically. So you can sit there and just pummel so much damage into someone, and you get the energy cost reduction to allow it to be efficient too. But again, I think it's something that's underrated, and something that needs to see more playtime, especially in like fire and frost mages. You then have the Royal Robe. Place a magic rune under your feet, which strengthens the magic abilities of you and your allies as long as you stand in it. The rune will increase cast speed by 11.111% and magic and attack power by 5%. Stacks up to 6 times. So I don't like this ability at all. In fact, I actively dislike this ability for a couple of reasons. Because I've had someone try to play it against me in a Hellgate. They all stacked up. We ran a fire mage and a curse staff. I popped my E as a curse staff on top of all of them, and they nearly died at the end of it. Like, if you're going to stack up against any team at the moment, you're pretty much asking to die. Like, so I actually was an advocate of the Druid Helmet, the one that drops a pool on the floor to get energy back. The reason is you can actually dip in and out of it, so you don't have to stay in it, you can just dip in and out when it's safe. This one, if you leave it, it becomes useless. It's as long as you stand in it, and that's a really key thing. So I think this is really, really bad and needs some changes to it. It's also quite a short duration for a minute cooldown. Druid Robe. Oh, I love this ability. Increases your damage and heal power by 8% for 10 seconds. During this time, each time you activate an ability, this effect is multiplied. This is insane. Like, this is crazy. If you run this with a very instant cast build, you can start getting into some serious amounts of damage all off your own back and very quickly as well. So as curse staff, if I just spam Q, I'm going to start dropping people towards the end of this. It's just going to be ticking for so much. Again, completely underrated and very, very strong. And the Fiend Robe. A fiendish 4-meter radius aura surrounds you for 4 seconds. Enemies entering it will run away in fear. Again, amazing. Completely underused because it's hard to get, but if you can get it, it's completely fantastic. The reason is you can either use it on yourself, so you can just pop it and then stand still and no one can enter it because they will run away. Or if your healer is taking aggro, you can run over to your healer and pop it and just... But it also runs with you. It's an aura around you, so you can pop it, run around your whole team, and everyone's going to get feared. It's pretty nuts, to be honest. So we're going to move into the boots. I'm going to start with the Mage Sandals. So again, Courier is on every boot for carry load, and then the other three skills are the same as the helmets. We then have we'll start with this one, which is run. It's on every single boot in the game. It's the 60% run for 10 seconds. We then have energetic sprint. Increases your move speed by 100% for 3 seconds and regenerates 10 energy every second for 3 seconds. So that's 30 energy every 30 seconds on demand and 100% move speed. Amazing for healers, amazing for fire mages, amazing for frost mages. Pretty useless for everyone else, in my opinion. Choose a ground tag. Oh, sorry, just to go over energetic sprint. If I didn't say it was actually on all of the cloth boots, that's the one that's shed. This is the mage only one. Choose a ground target within 15 meters. 1 second after activation, you will be targeted to the desired position. Your cast or channel will not be interrupted by the teleport. However, it is not possible to teleport through obstacles. So what you can do with this is, if I'm using my curse staff and I put this, you click this away just as I start channeling, I can actually teleport 15 meters away and continue my channel. So I could pop a channel somewhere and then teleport, and they're going to run to where I was originally. It's really good. Very, very high skill cap, I believe. Not very many people run it. I think it just has that. There are other things that do this better. Well, not does this better, but other things that just straight up beat this. I believe it has a place, and it could be used by someone with very high skill, basically. You then got the Cleric Sandals. Teleports the caster to the cursor. Teleports the caster to the cursor's position unless something is in the way. Basically, it's not going to allow you to go over like rocks and stuff. You have to have a clear line of sight as to where you're going. And it's just a 20-second jump without any immunity frames, without any of that. It's just a 20-second move from one place to another on a 7-meter range. It's not very good. I prefer the Assassin Boots over this every single time. Scholar Sandals increases your move speed by 60%, your crowd control resistance by 194 for 5 seconds. During the focus, you can't attack or cast spells, but you regain 7 energy every half second. So that's 14 energy every second for 5 seconds. That's a pretty significant amount. Taking damage will shorten the duration of the effect. So this isn't very good because it doesn't stop you taking damage at all. Like, you don't get crowd control, which means you can run away. You'll get a bit of energy, but you're going to be taking damage if you're running around. Like, there's no reason to pop this unless you are being targeted. And if you're being targeted, they're just going to deal more damage to reduce it. I don't think it's very good, and I think it needs to be changed, to be honest. We're then going to go into the Royal Sandals for the Sigil. Increases your move speed by 75% and your damage by 20% for 5 seconds. While the rush is active, your armour is also reduced by 68. This is insane. I like it if played by the right person at the right time. So a 75% move speed increase is good. For 5 seconds, it's actually quite exceptional at that point. It tends to be 100% for 6 seconds, or 100% for 3 seconds, or 60% for 6. It doesn't tend to be in the middle, so it makes this quite unique. While the rush is active, your armour is also reduced by 68. So it doesn't reduce your magic resist, it only reduces your armour, which means if you're actually outrunning melees, the armour loss isn't a major thing. However, having the 20% damage, if you're running a dot class like a fire mage or a curse staff, this is really underrated. Like, you can pop all your dots on someone and then pop this and just kite, and you're going to do a lot of damage. Very underrated, and understandably it's very underrated because it is a damage it's a risky thing to use, but if used right, I can see it being quite effective. Druid Sandals, your feet freeze the ground beneath them. For the next 5 seconds, your move speed will increase by 30%, and you will leave a trail of frozen ground behind when moving. If the enemy touches it, he is slowed by 80%. I just want to say 80% is way too high of a slow. It's basically a root at that point. It's a 5 second duration for a 40 second cooldown, which isn't bad. It's only a 30% move speed increase, so if they don't run on your frozen ground, like, it's pointless. It's only very good if you're being completely tunneled as a melee. Completely tunneled by a melee. If you've got a caster, they're just going to ignore it. If you've got a ranged DPS like a bow, they're just going to completely ignore it. Don't think it's very good right now. It's very cliche for duels, but for GVG and Hellgates, I just don't think it has a place in the meta right now. And finally, we have Fiend Sandals. This is the dream. This is the one that I've wanted to get my hands on so much. Instantly swap positions with an enemy or a group member on a 40-second cooldown. Instant cast with no energy cost. So I want to really run a build, like an engaging tank build, that is Fiend Sandals with Wind Wall Chest. Like, you swap with their, like, a caster that goes out of position, So you swap positions and then you wind wall their whole team away. Their caster's out of position even further now when he's in your team dying, and they are all wind walled away. I think it'd be really cheesy, but it could be really fun. In terms of what it is as a spell, it offers no real mobility, and in fairness, you'd potentially screw over group members if you're starting to teleport to them to keep yourself alive. So I don't think it has a place unless you're running a really cheesy build around it. But yes, so that is the all the cloth items, guys. The next one is actually going to be swords, I believe. It is. So the next one will be swords. We're going to go through each of the swords, good builds for them, all the stuff like that. But other than that, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, check out my Twitch. I'll be streaming first thing in the morning. Other than that, guys, have a good night.